Hey, hi, hello, and welcome back to Em Reads Books. I'm Em, and I read books. Today is going to be my October wrap-up, so we're going to talk about, I would say, at least some of the books that I read in October. I read a total of 18 books, although I did end up DNFing one, and that was Dune. I tried it, and I started reading Dune, and it just felt like the book didn't want me to read it. And so basically just the language, I don't know if it's just because it was from the 1970s and, you know, people were more complex back then. But I'm a millennial and I like to read books that want me to read them, that make it easy for me to read them. So that's sort of just where I stand on that. The first book that I read was When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. And this book, you know, there was sort of, I don't want to call it controversy, but there were a lot of complaints about it not being a thriller, that it was more of just sort of a gentrification mystery. And I have to say that I completely disagree. This book is a thriller. Like, if by halfway through you're not scared out of your mind and not knowing who to trust or even what's going on, I'm not sure that we read the same book. And also, if you're feeling that feeling of being scared and like confusion and excitement, that's a thriller, like by definition. This book was so good. It was relevant, like amazingly relevant for 2020, given everything that has been happening. And like, I ended up rating it 4 stars out of 5 just because I didn't feel like there was enough foreshadowing for the ending. I loved the ending, for the record. Some people have been like, whoa! But, you know, it's all according to taste. If you know me, you know that when I read a story, I like to be surprised, but I like for there to be, you know, hints of how it's gonna go. That way, if I read the book again, I can see it coming. But this was just a really, really great read. Next, I read To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini, which this book is about as sci-fi as it comes. We're following Kira as she basically just gets put into this entire new world with like xenomorphs and stuff. That's honestly not the best description. It's fine. Gil's sitting off to the side. He's allowed to sneeze. But she's basically thrust into this sci-fi adventure. This is a standalone novel, which I stand standalones, just because, you know, it's so often that, you know, if you're in a series long enough that it lets you down. And you know, it's impossible for that to happen if it's a standalone. I mean, the book can let you down, sure, but, you know, you're not going to get your hopes built up for 7 books and then have it end in the 8th. That's all I'm saying. So I read Woven in Moonlight by Isabel Ibanez, and it was so good. It was literally, magic was woven into the story so nicely. And it was predictable, but like, you know, coming from me, that doesn't mean much. Just because I sit there and I guess the whole time, and I'm just like, oh, I bet this is gonna happen, and that's who this guy is, and, you know. But I really sort of liked the originality of how magic is used in here. Basically, it's coming sort of from the stars and the moon, and our main character has the ability to, like, weave starlight or moonlight into her tapestries, and I just think that's so cool. That's not something I've seen before. I also read Tower of Nero, which was just like, yes! So this was one where he's literally ending a 15-book series and he stuck the landing. Like, that's so hard. I felt completely satisfied reading this book, and I mean, I don't know if you can see. Oh no, my Rick Riordan shelf is just out of frame, but it was really impressive and it was really cute, and if you liked the Percy Jackson books, you will love this book. That's just the facts. I also read Kingdom of Copper, which is the second book in the Daevabad trilogy. So I read City of Brass last month and really loved it. Gil tried reading City of Brass and was not a fan. He just said he couldn't get into it, which I kind of understand. I'd say for the first 100 pages I was like, eh. But once you get in, you're in. And so in Kingdom of Copper, there was none of that sort of learning curve building up. It was just, you are just straight back where you were. There's a 5-year time skip, and everything is still crazy. And I loved it. I loved being able to alternate in perspectives between Dara and Ali and Nari. And there were some twists and turns in there that I was really excited about, and I cannot wait to read Empire of Gold. That's the thing about sort of coming in late to the whole bookstagram scene, is that I don't have to wait for Empire of Gold to come out. I don't have to wait for Dragon Republic to come out, you know? I can get in right now and be happy. It's awesome. So the next book that I read, which it should come as no surprise, is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And oh my god, it's so rare that a book almost makes me cry. Like, straight up. The last 2 books that I can remember that have made me actually cry were Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows when I was in middle school, and The Fault in Our Stars when I was a college freshman. So, like, to put that into perspective, I don't think a book has made me cry in almost 10 years. Am I heartless? A little bit. But this book is just so beautiful. Like, honestly, the blurb is deceptive. You know, don't go into this book sort of thinking that it's going to be like all of Schwab's other books. Just go in expecting to hear a story, right? Admittedly, that's what you should do going into any book. But we're following Addie, and, you know, she's been sort of cursed never to be remembered, and then finally she meets someone who remembers her, and then everything's meshing, and then we wait for Schwab to just break our hearts, and she does. I also read The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and so like I've said before, she wrote one of the series that I have enjoyed a lot called The Naturals. It's sort of a YA serial killer mystery thing. But this book, so the way that it's presented, I think, was a little questionable, just in the sense that everyone was sort of, I would say they were pitching it as she's going to this house and everyone's trying to kill her. And that's not actually true. What the real pitch is that she, you know, she's in the will of this billionaire guy, and he has left all of his inheritance basically to her. And there are 4 brothers who, you know, are a little bit peeved about not getting any money, which is understandable. But the whole point of the book is to bring them together. But this is a fast-paced book. It's intelligent. There's riddles. There's puzzles. Honestly, after reading the book, I looked back at the cover, and there were so many hints to what happens in the story on the cover, and I love that. But I would say this is a perfect YA mystery. It's not a standalone. There will be others, which I'm very happy about, but, you know, going into it knowing that there will be other books is good. In the sort of weirder vein of the books that I read is Middle Game by Seanan McGuire, which, as you know, I love math. I'm a mathematician. And so getting to read a book that so faithfully represents a love of math in a way that doesn't seem dry or cliche was really nice. And there's always, you know, I wouldn't call it a trope necessarily, but it's a common structure now to have, you know, books within books with multiple timelines, and this does it almost perfectly, I would say. It's weird. I'll add on to that. Like, if you thought the Starless Sea was weird and confusing, this is even more weird and confusing. But if you like that sort of thing, this book is perfect for you. And I really, really enjoyed it. I will say that it's a really long book, at least for me. It was more than 500 pages, and some of it drags on. But if you can get through that, you'll be happy. And there is a sort of like follow-up story kind of Over the Woodward Wall, which is the children's book that is referenced in the story multiple times, and I'm excited to read that later. Next, I read Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey, and this book, it was haunting. I would say that's an accurate representation of it. So we're following this woman who is basically studying these Arctic terns. At least I think that's the bird that she was studying. Regardless, she's studying birds. And we get to hear all about sort of extinction in nature and just all of the loss that she's gone through and her wanderlust. Like, legitimately, she feels so sort of pinned down when she's in one place. She just needs to travel. And I think it's a really good winter book just because she's traveling, like, to Antarctica. And so you're getting all of these, like, cold vibes in it. Next, in books that almost made me cry, is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This book is about Dia de Muertos, which is, you know, the Day of the Dead. And we're following Yadriel, who is a brujo. That's sort of, which in their culture is basically sort of a watcher over of ghosts, and they're trying to help them pass on. And so Yadriel is sort of so bent on proving that he is a brujo because he is trans, and so he was born female, and in this culture females are healers, and that's about it. But he goes out and begins the ceremony to become a brujo, and it works, right? But then there's a small issue, which is that he immediately comes across this ghost named Julian, and, you know, A, Julian's hot, but B, he needs to sort of deal with this whole situation because he has other stuff going on. Like, a member of his brotherhood has gone missing, there's this whole mystery going on, and it takes place, I would say, over maybe 3 days to a week. And it's just, it feels fast-paced the entire time, and I feel like there are so few books that handle representation in this way, and I thought that it was really admirable. Like, I enjoyed the representation that was done here for the sort of like the trans community. But, you know, that being said, I don't have nearly as much experience in that, so take that as you will. I also read The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson, and this book was good. I will say it was good. My one problem with it is that when I read a sci-fi book, I want it to, like, you know, sort of stick with that sci-fi the whole time. And I'm cool with political intrigue. That can be tossed in there. This book turned into, it transformed from, like, mostly sci-fi with a little bit of political intrigue to mostly political intrigue with a little bit of sci-fi. But, you know, that being said, I love a book about the multiverse. I love, you know, interplanar travel. That's sort of stuff that I dig. And I think this is sort of a good starter sci-fi because it's not that sci-fi-y. The last book that I read this month was Jade City by Fonda Lee. And I have been saving this book. I've been wanting to read it for so long. Like, to the point where every time I would go into the library to pick up other holds, my librarian would straight up ask me, have you read Jade City yet? I need to know if it's good so I can buy it. Like, this is the level of librarian relationships that I have. And this did not disappoint. It was a little slow at the beginning, but it's a slow burn, you know, and I can appreciate a slow burn. And so, because we're following this sort of mafia-esque clan, and they're, in essence, getting closer and closer and closer to an all-out turf war between the Mountain and the No Peak clans. And, ooh, later I'm going to be making a video sort of about if you liked these movies and TV shows, you'll like this book. And Jade City, 100%, if you like The Godfather and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, this is the book for you. It's literally The Godfather, except that we're adding in a magic system based on Jade, and just some badass martial arts. Like, it's good. So, that's my October wrap-up. I know I left out a few books, but honestly, I read 18 books and I don't want to talk about 18 books. So, if you liked this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you want to see more of my videos, subscribe. I promise I'm trying to do better and actually put out a video every week. I'm also trying to graduate though, so we'll see. And keep reading.